Why is the Reid technique so successful? One of the primary reasons that the Reid technique is so successful in helping investigators resolve criminal investigations and to secure acknowledgement of guilt from the offender is that the process is built on an understanding of human nature. The core element of the Reid interrogation process is what we call theme development, in which the investigator presents a moral or psychological excuse for the subject's behavior. The interrogation theme reinforces the subject's rationalizations or justifications for committing the crime. As part of an offender's decision to commit a crime, or in the case of a spontaneous crime following it, it is natural for him or her to justify or rationalize the crime in some manner. Psychologists refer to this internal process as techniques of neutralization. Gresham Sykes and David Matza first introduced the neutralization theory of criminology in the 1950s, and it focuses on how individuals who engage in criminal activity can justify their actions to themselves and to others. According to their theory, criminals use techniques such as denial of responsibility, denial of injury, denial of the victim, condemnation of the condemners, and appeal to a higher loyalty to neutralize their feelings of guilt or shame associated with what they've done. This theory proposes that people who commit crimes often use techniques of neutralization to deflect responsibility for their actions and to justify their criminal behavior. I didn't really hurt anybody. They had it coming to them. Look, I didn't do it for myself, are, as Sykes and Matza point out, examples of neutralizations. Neutralizations, also called rationalizations, are defined as justifications or excuses for deviant behavior. Sykes and Matza identified 5 techniques of neutralization. Denial of responsibility. Individuals who commit crimes may argue that their actions were beyond their control, or they were forced into committing the crime by circumstances beyond their control. Denial of injury. Individuals may argue that their actions did not cause any real serious harm, or that the harm caused was not significant enough to warrant any punishment. Denial of the victim. Individuals may argue that the victim of the crime was deserving of the harm inflicted upon them. Condemnation of the condemners. Individuals may argue that individuals or institutions that are punishing them are themselves corrupt and immoral. Appeal to higher loyalties. Individuals may argue that their actions were justified because they were acting in the service of a higher moral or ethical principle. According to criminal psychologist Shad Maruna, professor of justice and human development at the Law School of Queen's University, Belfast in Northern Ireland, studies indicate that the majority of criminals either make excuses for or attempt to justify their actions, quote, as a way to mitigate the guilt, end of quote. He went on to say the criminologists have interviewed every imaginable sample of individuals who break laws and found a remarkable consistency in the use of what we call techniques of neutralization. There have been studies of deer poachers, terrorists, rapists, shoplifters, cyber hackers, murderers, you name it. And yet the individuals involved tend to use a very consistent and discernible number of post hoc rationalizations to account for what they did. Neutralization theory proposes that people who commit crimes often use techniques of neutralization to deflect responsibility for their actions and to justify their criminal behavior. So with this basic understanding of human nature in mind, it's a very effective approach and a very understandable approach during an interrogation for the investigator to shift the blame for what the subject did onto some person or circumstance other than the subject themselves. Because in most instances, that's what the subject has already done in their own mind. Over 6 decades ago, in the first edition of their book, Criminal Interrogation and Confessions, John Reid and Fred Imbaugh recognized this core element of human nature, that when we do something wrong, it's our natural inclination to shift the blame for our behavior onto some other source, the victim, an accomplice, some other influencing factor, in an attempt to mitigate our sense of guilt. So they developed an interrogation process called theme development, in which the investigator offers the subject an excuse or justification for their behavior. When we develop themes, we are oftentimes appealing to the subject's pre-existing justifications. Indicate we understand them, we understand the circumstances, which in turn makes them feel more comfortable in telling us the truth about what they did. Given the use of rationalizations by criminal offenders, the suggestion by an investigator that an accomplice talked them into committing the act under investigation, or suggesting that the victim was accidentally shot, or suggesting that the subject's financial pressures caused them to act out of character, or blaming the victim for doing or saying something that provoked the incident are oftentimes simply the justification the subject has already adopted in their own mind. Consequently, one of the primary reasons that the Reid technique is so successful in helping investigators resolve criminal investigations and to secure an acknowledgement of guilt from the offender is that the process is built on an understanding of human nature. For more information about the Reid technique, visit our website, reid.com, and our book, Criminal Interrogation and Confessions. Thank you very much for spending a few minutes to listen to this presentation.